Welcome to Mysteries to Die For. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. All of our stories are structured to challenge you to beat the detective to the solution. These are arrangements, which means instead of word-for-word readings, you get a performance that's meant to be heard. Jack and I perform these live, front to back, no breaks, no fakes, no retakes. This is Season 7, Games People Play. Games are about competition conducted according to rules, with participants working toward a goal. Games are a part of every culture and are one of the oldest forms of social interaction and engagement. Games can be fun, challenging, and exhilarating. They can also be intense, cutthroat, and lethal. This season, our authors have fashioned deadly games and unscrupulous villains to test your detection skills. Welcome to episode 24. A Maze is the featured game, and this is A Maze to Death, not a documentary, by TG Wolff.
And what tune shall we pick today?
It is a British manor setting.
British manor, so we should get a harpsichord, should we? I don't know if we actually
sounds like a harpsichord.
Well, I don't actually know if I have a harpsichord on here. These are organs.
I don't really like the sound of the electric organ.
Oh, you're saying I'm not supposed to pick these then? Fine.
No,
If you hate me so much.
I don't.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Feels like you should be playing that with your pinky up. This is Mysteries to Die For. Somebody is going to die. I don't think they can sound that happy. Can you at least slide it to a minor key? Okay. Sounds a little better.
Okay, this will be a great episode, guys. Don't worry.
We are totally coordinated today.
Very much so. All right, let's jump in.
Scene 1. The Secretary. Jack strategically positioned the armchair in front of the library's oversized fireplace. "This looks good," he said. "The light coming through the window hits the opposite wall, so no shadows for us to fight with." "It's a little echoey in here," Reuben said, unraveling a thin black cord as he walked toward the tall, stiff man who was their subject. "Hopefully the books will absorb some of the sound." "I'll angle the chair a little bit more." The adjustment Jack made had the full bookshelf rising behind the interviewee's chair. "Do you think we could grab a snack from the kitchen?" Reuben looked to the door as if willing a maid to carry in a tray of sandwiches. "Breakfast was hours ago." Jack aligned the camera with the chair. "It's 11:30. We can film a few interviews and then take a break for lunch." "I bet the pub in the village will have burgers." Reuben plugged the cord into the front of the camera. "What was the name?" "Something with the screw." "Are you ready for me, gentlemen?" The tall, thin man wore dress pants, matching vest, and a pale blue shirt rolled up at the sleeves. "This way, Mr. Stennis," Reuben said, directing their first subject to the awaiting chair. "Before you sit, let's put this microphone up through your vest to hide the cord." The man did as asked, then clipped the lavalier to the open collar of his shirt. "Is this sufficient?" Reuben adjusted the positioning, aiming the tiny microphone toward the face. "Excellent." "Make yourself comfortable," Jack said, adjusting the settings on the tripod-mounted camera for the man's height. "I'm going to ask you the same questions we emailed about. Just look at me. If you look into the camera, I'll ask you the question again." He sat in the chair next to the camera, pulled his phone out of his pocket. "First, a sound check. Please say your name and position." "Ivor Stennis. I'm secretary to Mr. Roger Shandon." Reuben pressed a headphone to his ear, listened. "We're good." He put the headset on and hoisted the boom mic into position. Jack lifted his phone and read the screen. "Can you repeat your name, position, and how you came to work for Mr. Shandon?" "My name is Ivor Stennis. I have worked as secretary to Mr. Roger Shandon for 3 years. I was recommended by an acquaintance when my predecessor left the post. Some months before I was hired, Mr. Shandon bought Whistlefield. It had been unoccupied since the last owner died and needed updating. Thank you for sitting down with us for a documentary on Whistlefield's history, Jack said. It sounds like you're very proud of the work put in to restore it. Can you tell us about the house? The manor, he corrected. And Whistlefield is more than this 400-year-old building that we're in. The property is expansive with grounds for cricket, brushwoods perfect for rabbit hunting, and a truly spectacular maze. What makes this maze so amazing? Jack punned. Stennis lowered his brow in disapproval. With 4 entrances, the 15-foot-tall hedge creates over a mile of footpaths around 2 greens. The north green features an Italian fountain of the Roman goddess Venus, while her Greek counterpart Aphrodite is in the south green. The maze is so complicated that we had to place a bugle at each entrance for people to take with them in the event they could not find their way out. That's pretty amazing, Mr. Stennis. I take it people have had to use the bugles? On several occasions, Stennis said with a small smile. The gardeners, of course, know the course, and those of us living here have become quite well versed in navigating the turns to save stranded explorers. Jack scrolled on his phone. Beyond the maze, is there a part of Whistlefield you especially like? The main entrance is an extraordinary feature of architecture, Stennis says. The circular staircase... Help! Help! A woman's voice echoed in the hall. Please, somebody, help! Neville Shandon's been murdered! Stennis leapt from the chair. The lavalier wire stretched tight. The camera jerked forward. Jack rose and spun, clutching the camera to his chest. Holy Swiss cheesecake! The mic! Reuben shouted, wrapping his hand around the cord to protect the tech. The cord abruptly spun Stennis around. He stumbled, caught himself, cursing as he yanked the clip off his shirt. Miss Forrest! In here, Vera! A woman, no older than Jack and Reuben, staggered into the parlor. Strands of hair escaped their braid, and her face was pale, and her stockings torn and legs scratched. What happened to you? Reuben asked, helping the woman to the chair Stennis vacated. Howard Torrance and I were racing, she said, her hand closed tightly around Reuben's. I found the center of the maze and... She swallowed hard. And there was Neville Shandon on the bench. Stennis planted his hands on his knees. The statue. Was it Venus or Aphrodite? What? She asked, dumbfounded. I don't know. What I know is that Neville is dead. When 2 maids appeared in the doorway, Stennis ordered them to take care of Vera Forrest. I'll collect the gardeners, he said, and search the maze. Jack and Reuben looked at each other and said with one mind, We're going too. Scene 2. The body. Hurry, Jack! We're gonna lose him! Reuben called over his shoulder as he ran after Stennis and the gardeners. The boom mic with its fuzzy cover loomed high over its head, making him look like a ghosted giraffe from the Serengeti. The camera weighs more than a fat cat with a salami addiction, Jack complained, but quickened his pace. I didn't buy the insurance when I signed it out from the university. My parents will kill me if I break it. This maze is enormous, Reuben said with awe as he crossed the entrance. Please tell me you charged the battery. I did, Jack said. Do you have the mics? Lavalier for you, boom mic for me, he said. They went this way. He took a left passage. Left, left, straight, corner, right. Reuben came to a halt. Bloody hell! It's a body! Turn the camera on, Jack! No cameras, Stennis shouted. We'll document the scene, Jack said, coming up beside Reuben. We have Mr. Shandon's permission to film. A gardener staggered back from where a body did sit on a bench. Mr. Stennis, sir, this isn't Neville Shandon. It's Roger Shandon. What? Impossible. Stennis hurried over to the body that was slumped over the arm of a white metal bench. He examined it and stood slowly, his face pale. It is Roger, but Vera said it was Neville. Reuben whispered, Are you getting this? Yeah, Jack said. Get the mic closer. The gardener examined the body as if it were a weed to be plucked. They are twins, sir. Maybe the girl was confused. What's this here? He crouched down. Jack circled, using slow, methodic steps, the camera capturing the bewilderment of the two gardeners and Stedness. He zoomed in at their feet and the object laying atop the grass. It's a dart, Stedness said, like the kind used with an air rifle. Look for others or anything else out of place. In a slow, almost free-frames action, the players systematically inspected every square inch of Venus's green. Jack filmed. Reuben recorded the mutterings and mumblings. Here's something. A gardener had gone back into the maze. There's a box that goes with the darts on the ground here. Jack followed the voice around the wall to where a small box laid half under one of the hedges. It had to be kicked there. Could have been thrown, Reuben said. Jack turned and, as he did, the camera lens found a thin spot in the hedge that nearly acted as a shelf. He put his eye to the viewer. Look here, this hole looks right over where the body was sitting. He pulled back and each took their turn looking at Roger and Venus through the eyes of a killer. We should check the other green, Stedness said. You two, stay with Roger. Don't touch anything, he ordered the gardeners, then continued down the path with Reuben and Jack on his heels. So you want to give people the background on Reuben and Jack?
Yeah, I guess if you wanna.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was supposed to? So Reuben is a real-life British dude from Brighton. Cool guy. And he and I did an interview of TG Wolff here for a project we were doing for our one class. And so this is loosely based off of random imaginings my mom had after. I don't know, she's delusional. She decided we were actually in a maze. But anyway, this is loosely based off the banter and the dialogue we had. Reuben's a very nice guy, but he's also he's an interesting guy as well.
He was hungry.
He's hungry. He really wanted to try a couple burger places around here because he had never been to the town that we live in. So, yeah. Anything else you wanted me to mention?
So this is an adaptation. The original story is called Murder in the Maze.
Okay.
I had it as Death in the Maze, but no, it's double M's. Murder in the Maze. And was written by J.J. Connington. And we will learn more about him at the end of the story.
I'm excited for JJ.
Scene 3. The Other Body. How could a dart that small kill a man? Reuben asked, slightly out of breath as he chased after Stedness. Stedness shook his head. I'm no expert, but I'd say it couldn't, not on its own. Darts like those are meant for small animals, rabbits, and squirrels. He took a right and then a quick left. Stedness! Thank God you came. The man was half Stedness's age, but was bent over with his hands on his knees. Vera made it back to the house then. Yes, Howard. She was rattled, but told us she found Neville dead. But it was actually Roger. Howard stood up, his brows pressed together. But it was Neville, without a doubt. Have a look for yourself. He turned this way. He came and entered a equal but different green, this one with Aphrodite smiling gently down on a man's body prone at her feet. I told you so, Howard said. Jack kept his eyes to the viewer. This is crazy. Totally, Reuben said. Death makes for great television. Keep filming. Stennis knelt beside the body to examine it. It is Neville, he announced. Look for more darts. Jack and Reuben inspected the ground with eyes, camera, and microphone. 2 were found, one behind the bench, one under Neville's arm. A piece of paper was trapped on the wall, a white spot in a dark green field. Reuben pulled it free. It's a legal document, like for a court. The Crown versus Edward Titterman. That's the case Neville is prosecuting, Stennis explained. From what I understand, it's a very big deal. Jack zoomed in, filling the frame with Stennis's sober face. Titterman is a modern-day Al Capone. Neville was his Elliot Ness, bringing him down for tax evasion. He looked around. There has to be more around. He was coming here for a quiet place to prepare for court. Jack swung the camera around, looking for another hole in the shrubbery. Mr. Stennis, there's another gap just at eye height. Stennis joined Jack, but he had to bend slightly to look through the space. He put his back to it, confirming the line of sight over the body to the bench. Reuben pointed beneath the shrub next to the bench. There's a briefcase. Stennis retrieved it. Empty. Damn. Do you think that's why he was killed? Howard asked. Stennis lifted his chin. Dark eyes were large with concern. Someone wants it to appear that way. We need to get back and call for help. Howard, stay with Neville. Why can't they stay? Howard whined, sounding like a Howard. They're college kids filming a documentary. I'm not leaving them with a dead body. Stennis didn't wait for a response, but marched out of the maze center. He navigated the twists and turns as if on automatic pilot. Then he suddenly stopped. Does that look like footprints to you? The longer grass on the edge of the path was recently trampled. The green blades crumpled and broken. Reuben gasped. The killer came this way. This is one of the ways out, Stennis said. Let's follow them. Jack hung back, framing Stennis as he left the maze, walking away from the house. What's down this way? A stream, Stennis said. A good spot for fishing, but hardly for a getaway. Although if you keep going for a few miles, you'll come to the east gate. They followed the trail to a large tree. After combing the area for several minutes, Stennis looked into the camera. It just ends. Scene 4. The Hunter. My name is Arthur Hawkhurst. Roger and Neville Shandon were my uncles on my mother's side. Can we stop for a minute? He dropped his head and rubbed both hands through his thick hair. When he looked up, he asked, Are you sure they're dead? We're sorry to say, but there's no doubt, Reuben said gently, making no move to stop the camera. What were they like? Uncle Roger's all right. He could be a bit stuffed these days, but he must have been something back in the day. He earned his fortune in Africa. Nobody in the family is certain exactly what he did. A few years ago, when I came down with the sleeping sickness, he took me and Sylvia in. He's been really very... Arthur choked. He gulped. We argued. He went into a rage and he banned me from the piano. I reacted badly. I see that now. He pressed the hand to his mouth. I'll never be able to apologize. That's what I came in here to do. Jack pushed the boom mic out further. You reacted badly? Arthur had a pained expression as he nodded. I told him I'd get even, but I didn't kill him, he said quickly. Jack and Reuben turned from Arthur to the wall where a small rifle rested. It's a rifle for rabbit hunting, Arthur said, looking between the two. What? Jack asked, what kind of bullets does it use? Arthur stood and threw his hands up in one violent action. It uses a dart, you twit. I'm shooting rabbits for stewing, not trying to obliterate them from the face of the earth. Arthur dug into his breast pocket and pulled out a slim, almost delicate dart, identical to the ones found at the scene of the crime. This is my tool of mass Lego forma destruction. He spun the tip between his fingers. So unless he was killed with a dart, I'm in the clear. They, were killed with a dart, dude, Reuben said. Both your uncles. Arthur froze, the murder weapon look-alike dropping to the floor. Thank God I made it home. A pudgy version of Neville and Roger Shandon limped into the room. Arthur, Get up and let me have the seat. The former looked put out, but did as he was told. The latter dropped heavily into the chair with a noisily dramatic gasp. My foot. Oh, the pain. My gout is acting up. The man removed his right shoe and began rubbing his foot. How foolish I was, thinking I could walk that distance. I should have taken the bicycle. I could have traveled that distance in a quarter of an hour with it. He looked up at his audience. Who are you? I'm Jack, and this is Reuben. We're from the university and filming a documentary on Whistlefield. It was a documentary on the estate, Reuben corrected. Now it's a true crime drama about the murders of Roger and Neville Shandon. What? The man cried, and then collapsed in a dead faint. You know what this means, Reuben said to Jack, who nodded. Scene 5.
You know something I realized? So a harpsichord, you can only play one note at a time on a real harpsichord. I don't know what this instrument is. It says it's a clavi. I don't remember what that could be, to be honest, because it's just an abbreviation for whatever it clearly is. But for it to be a true harpsichord, it would be more like... Well, except for those last two notes. But it'd be like more hip. Well, not hip. That's clearly not what they were making back in... I don't know. When was the harpsichord invented?
I don't know, but it was hip for its day.
Apparently. Anyway, so this isn't a true harpsichord. This is Jack.
Is it Jacksichord?
Yep.
All right. With that introduction of the Jacksichord, let's go to scene 5.
The other brother.
It is the other brother. This is my other uncle, the youngest brother. Ernest, wake up. Arthur didn't hurry to the man's aid, but pulled the cord and then casually arranged him in a more comfortable position. The movement seemed to awaken him. What happened? Ernest asked. You had one of your episodes, Arthur said, stepping back in line with the filmmakers. Ernest pressed one hand to his heart and the other to his head. Oh yes, I remember. You said, but it can't be true. Roger and Neville? Both? Apparently, Arthur said with an air of annoyance. But that's impossible. Stennis entered the room at that moment. Mr. Shandon, you've heard the news. But it can't be, Stennis. They were both so warm, kind, vital. Ernest wailed loudly, his face a mask of psychological pain, his arms flailing side to side. Roger opened his home to us all without complaint. Arthur and Stennis didn't agree, and they didn't disagree. Rather, they stood and allowed the comments to move past them as they might a breeze with the stench of fertilizer. Stennis, tell me what happened, Ernest beseeched. Stennis retold what had occurred from the arrival of Vera Forrest. The police have come and gone. The bodies are upstairs in the billiard room until the inquest. Ernest turned green. He pressed a hand to his stomach and said, well, that seems unnecessary. They were both killed by darts from an air rifle, like that one, Stennis said, pointing to the gun Arthur had propped in the corner. We have a dozen like it on the estate, Arthur burst out defensively. That one was in my hands all day. And when he heard what he said, he hastily added, in the briar, hunting rabbits for stew. Worry not, nephew, worry not, Ernest said, collecting the wits that had laid about him. Stennis now gritted his teeth as he tried for the third time to continue his report. The darts we recovered were taken for analysis. The police suspect a fast-acting poison was the cause, not the darts themselves. I suggested Mr. Mallory be consulted, as he has made himself into an expert on toxins. Well, I personally find the man to be eccentric, Ernest commented dismissively. Stennis, I will need your help to take over the affairs. There's not a moment to waste. We must audit the accounts immediately. Why immediately? Stennis asked. Ernest lifted his chin and looked down at the taller man. Perhaps thievery was the motive. My brother was a wealthy man. It very well could be that some fiend was trying to rob him, and when they could not, they killed him instead. It was a stupid conjecture. From the demeanor of the others, it wasn't the first time they'd heard something like that. That would not explain the death of Mr. Neville, but, Stennis says, and much as it pains me, the police offered the same potential motive and asked for an accounting. Such intelligent men, Ernest said, as he leapt to standing, one shoe off, one shoe on. It does the heart good to know my brothers are in capable hands. Come, Stennis, to my brother's office. Scene 6. The billiard room. Reuben turned on the light. The chandelier centered over the billiard table shined down on the bodies. They laid side by side on the green felt and were painted with the light filtered through the side glass on the chandelier casing. Fucking creepy, Reuben said, lowering the boom mic toward the heads. Jack hefted the camera to his shoulder. What are you doing with that? They're dead, Reuben. They're not going to talk to us. Reuben didn't move the mic. You never know. We're recording, Jack said, zooming in on the closer face. They were both killed with darts that were laced with poison. Which one is this one? I don't know, Reuben admitted. They're dressed the same. You would have thought they would have stopped that once their mums stopped laying out their clothes. Shirts, vests, coats. If the darts would have hit them in the body, they probably would have bounced off. Well, this one has a mark on his neck, below his ear. Jack focused on the raised welt. It almost looks like he was stung. He was, just not by an insect. Reuben moved to the other one. They remind me of Tweedledee and Tweedledum. My nan had this old book of nursery rhymes. Fancy artwork. The vests are spot on. What's the word for this? Ugly, Jack offered. Do you see the same hole on this one? Reuben examined the visible flesh of the neck and face. Not so far. Maybe it's on the back of the neck? We'll roll him over. Reuben leapt back, hands in surrender. I'm not rolling him over. You do it. I have the camera, Jack pointed out logically. He's not going to bite you. You never know. Reuben approached the body, his lip trembling nearly as much as his hands. He touched the shoulders and glass shattered. Fuck! Reuben dropped the body and ran. Holy guacamole! Jack hurried backwards, the camera sweeping left and right. The window! Something broke the window! The ghost of the Tweedles! Let's get out of here! Reuben ripped open the door and leapt into the hallway. Jack followed, tripping over the threshold and stumbling into a very soft wall. Scene 7. The lady. Your elbow. Please move it. The female voice made the request with dignity and patience. Sorry, Jack said, finding his balance with the camera still on his shoulder. I didn't mean to, you know. You're the two students from the university. I'm Sylvia Hawkhurst. My uncle was, her brow furrowed. Were? Oh, it's all so horrible. What were you doing in the billiard room? Looking for clues, Reuben said honestly. We aren't making a documentary anymore, at least not one about the house. The working title is Amazed to Death. Oh, my, she said, a hand to her throat. I'm good with titles, Reuben said, patting himself on the back. Mr. Stennis said the police suspect your uncles were poisoned by the darts. Sylvia moved along the wall until she reached the stairway. Then she sank onto the third step going up. I understand the same. I was with them before I left for lunch in the village with friends. Uncle Neville was deep in preparation for the big trial involving some sort of gang activity. He was just saying how much of the prosecution relied on him. That was why he was going to go to the Venus Garden to work. If he wasn't prepared, the accused would likely be acquitted. And now, he's gone. Neville was found in the Aphrodite Garden, Jack said, looking at Reuben, who nodded his agreement. Your friends, Vera Forrest and Howard Torrance, found him. My dear friends. Wait, did you say Aphrodite? Her brows pressed in concentration. I distinctly remember that Uncle Roger told Uncle Neville that he would find peace and quiet with Venus. My brother Arthur had been mastering Moonlight Sonata by playing it for hours at a time. He's quite good, but not perfect. Neville complained it wasn't conducive to crafting arguments. He was satisfied with Uncle Roger's suggestion. Reuben raised an eyebrow. Where was this, and who else was in the room at the time? Oh, we were in Uncle's office, she began. It was me, my 3 uncles, and Ivor Stennis. I had come in to fetch Uncle Ernest. He asked me for a ride to the East Gate for an afternoon of bird watching. It's about 3 miles, and Uncle isn't the fondest of physical activities. He knew we were leaving promptly at 11, but I came in to find him in his stocking feet. Was he complaining about his foot hurting? Jack asked. No, she said, and if he did, it was before I entered the room. Jack set his feet and framed the young woman in the lens. She was thinner than most, pretty without trying, even with her eyes sad from crying. Tell us about your Uncle Roger, Reuben prompted. Was he generous and as loving as we heard? She snorted and quickly covered it. My uncle was generous, but begrudgingly so. He moved his business from Cape Town to England and bought this estate. I don't know what he did, and I don't want to know. On more than one occasion, Uncle Neville had to intercede on his behalf when so-called investors paid us a visit. Arthur came down with the African sleeping sickness, and Uncle took us in. Our parents had passed and left us a small inheritance, but life would have been especially hard. Uncle never married and was more than happy when I took up the duties of running the household. He has never asked for anything in return, but he doesn't let us forget that we live on his generosity. He is especially pointed with Arthur. When did Ernest move in? Reuben asked. Is he as accomplished as his brothers? Maybe an author or a scientist? Sylvia giggled. Uncle Ernest? A scientist? More giggling. The only thing I've heard him be curious about is the time for luncheon. I believe Ernest came with the furniture and has been less useful. He's not a bad man, but I've never met anyone with less drive. He's resisted all of Uncle Roger's attempts to make him productive. Reuben nodded in understanding. My mother threatened to move my bed out into the garage if I didn't decide on a career. Did Roger threaten similar? Not quite, she said. I believe he was resigned to the fact that his younger brother was so much of a barnacle. He tried to entice him, offering to increase his nominal allowance for this or for that. I believe cataloging the birds on the estate was one such task. Sylvia shook her head. The only thing Ernest worked hard at was avoiding work at all. I always think it's kind of interesting when we read stories like this or you watch them on TV and like this idea of whole families living together is just so different from our world.
Yeah, I know who did it. I figured it out.
You did?
Yeah.
Don't say anything.
I know I can't. In fact, I don't even think I'm allowed to guess.
It's that obvious to you?
It's not that it's obvious. It's that I'll explain at the end.
Okay.
Because there's a special hint.
There is a special hint just for you.
Just for me.
You figured it out?
Yeah, I figured it out. My bad. I know who it is.
I should not have told him yesterday. I was driving him a little crazy because he pre-read just up to the deliberation. And I'm like, there's a special hint in there just for you. And maybe some people in the audience would get it, but as we'll reveal later, you have to have a certain experience.
Yeah. How would certain people in the audience get it?
Maybe we're thinking of different clues.
Which maybe. I don't think anyone would. Okay, we'll discuss later.
We'll discuss this in like 10 minutes.
All right.
Scene 8, The Poison. My name is Oliver Mallory. I am trained as an apothecary. My specialty is toxins and poisons. How is that? The round-faced man grinned at the camera. That was good, Mr. Mallory, Jack said, managing the talent. Can you do it again, only this time? Just look at me, and then wait. I'll ask you the questions. Right. My name is Oliver Mallory. I am trained as an apothecary. My specialties are toxins and poisons. How did you become interested in poisons? Jack asked. Well, accidentally, he said. You see, a mother came in with her young son, and his lips were blue. It was quite obvious it had eaten something, but she didn't know what. I was young myself, and though I tried my best, he died several hours later. During the inquest, the doctor from London recognized it as U poisoning. Devastated by her loss and my impotence in it, I began documenting local poisons and their antidotes. He lifted all of his chins. I'm happy to say that dozens have survived thanks to my work. That's really great, Jack said. Mr. Mallory, the police asked you to look at the darts found at the scene of the murders. Did you recognize the poison? Oh, yes, he said chipperly. It took only a few simple tests. It was curare. Oh, it isn't common to this region, but is found naturally in Africa, and it can be bought here. One variant is used as a rat poison. Is that where you think the poison came from, Jack asked? A local store? Possibly, Mallory said, but there's a good supply right here in this house. Roger brought it back from Africa. I could show it to you if you like. We like, Reuben said, lowering the boom mic. We like a lot. Mallory led the way up the stairs to the second floor, with Reuben and Jack following. At the end of the hallway, he pushed open the double doors to a museum-sized room. Pedestals and cabinets displayed pottery, ceramics, weapons, and more. Mallory bypassed it all for a bookcase in the back corner. This clay pot contains enough curare to bring down a herd of elephants, which is a totally horrible concept. Listen to the toe tag and read Elephant Safari by Peter Riva. It's really horrible. Don't do anything bad to elephants. Mallory carefully took the pot from the shelf and set it on the wide windowsill. He removed the lid from the broad mouth. It looks like somebody's been digging in here. Jack added light and zoomed in. Those tracks might have been made with a spoon. Scene 9. The Suspects. I want to run the camera this time, Reuben demanded. You get to ask all the questions. Not all of them, but you can have the camera, Jack said, moving the last chair into position. Do we have any more lavaliers? Not enough, Reuben said. You'll have to move the mic and keep it out of the frame. This is stupid, Arthur Hawkhurst said as he stalked into the room. You really think you're going to figure out who killed my uncles? We won't know until we try, Jack said. Please sit on one of the couches. It's worth trying, his sister Sylvia said, rubbing his arm soothingly. Do you want me on a couch too? Yes, please, Reuben answered. Mr. Shandon and Mr. Stennis, if you could take the other couch. Mr. Torrance and Miss Forrest, could you take the chairs? But I want to sit with Vera, Howard said, pouting. Vera lightly shoved him away. Oh, Howard, take your chair and be good with it. Ernest was agitated as he took the center stage seat. On top of being murdered, my brother was robbed. I'm not ready yet, Reuben said, working quickly to adjust the settings. Someone has been in his safe, he said. Over 15,000 gone. Reuben adjusts the viewer. Really, just a moment, Mr. Shandon. We don't know that it's been stolen, Stennis said, with his now characteristic patience. We haven't finished going through the books. He sent me to the bank just 2 days ago with the deposit. Just hit record, Jack ordered. We're missing this. Mr. Shandon, Reuben said sternly, you were saying that Mr. Roger Shandon's safe? The safe has been robbed. Yes, that's what I've been saying, Ernest frowned crossly. Haven't you been listening? But Mr. Stennis, you're not convinced? Stennis shook his head. I was a secretary, but Mr. Shandon kept the key to the safe to himself. No one could have been in there except for him, and I'm confident that the records for the money are among the documents. Ernest swelled, a bullfrog ready to bellow. Records? Bah! I doubt it, Stennis, but we'll go through every piece of paper in this house, to be sure. Stennis shook his head. As my employer is deceased, this is my last day at Whistlefield. I'm going to London on the last train. Sylvia gasped, her eyes wide and sad. She drew Stennis's attention, who stared wantingly. Arthur wrapped his arm around his sister. I want it on the record that I did not kill Uncle. It does look bad, Reuben said. The air rifle and darts you loved to shoot, the poison that killed them conveniently on the second floor. What? A chorus of questions filled the room. Mr. Mallory confirmed, Reuben said, both for the police and us, that the poison causes paralysis nearly instantly, which freezes the heart and the lungs. He explained, summarizing the afternoon's lesson. It explained why they were not able to defend themselves. Who of you knew that the poison was in the clay pot? No one admitted to the knowledge. Reuben looked at Jack and then continued the questions. Mr. Hawkhurst, you had a row with your uncle in which you promised to get even. Did you? No, as I said, I did not. Arthur looked defiant, but also miserable. I regret what I said, and I further regret that I'll never be able to make it up to him. Uncle could be difficult, but... He squeezed his sister's shoulders. He was good to us. He was good to you, Reuben said, then redirected. But Sylvia, with him gone, could you have more? Her gasp was sharp and pained. No, if anything, our lives are more up in the air than ever. Worry not, my dear, Ernest patted her leg. You will always be mistress of Whistlefield. She dabbed her eyes with her handkerchief. Thank you, Uncle Ernest. Your fortunes certainly change with their deaths, Reuben said to him. Not only do you inherit, but you are the sole surviving brother. Ernest's plump face narrowed. Be careful. You're on my generosity now. I gain nothing, Stennis said abruptly. I had a respected position, and now I'm out on my ear without even a reference letter. We will of course provide you with a recommendation, then Sylvia said rather shyly. That is, if you're determined to leave. Ernest squashed any chance of Stennis responding with the demanding, Are there any other questions? Reuben nodded. Who knows the way to the Goddess Gardens? All of us who live here. Stennis looked across the couches. Mr. Shandon, myself, Miss Hawkhurst, Mr. Hawkhurst, the gardeners. Then it reasons, Reuben continued, that Miss Forrest and Mr. Torrance did not, and Mr. Neville Shandon also did not. All heads nodded. Thank you, Reuben said. Now tell us where you were during the time of the murders, beginning with you, Miss Forrest. Lost in the maze, she said. Here in the library with you, Stennis said. Walking back from the east gate, Ernest said, and if I understand the timeline, I could have still been at the stream. Hunting rabbits, Arthur said, in the woods. In the village with my friends, Sylvia said. Lost in the maze, Howard Torrance said. Scene 10. The Conjecture. Jack and Reuben sat on the couch the siblings had vacated. Alone in the library, the camera sat 10 feet away, focused on their faces. The boom mic laid across Jack's lap. I need a hamburger, Reuben said. My stomach's growling so loud my head can't think. We'll get one in town. Let's think this through first, Jack said. Roger and Neville Shandon were twins, and even though they were old, they had the same haircut and they wore similar clothes. It'd be easy to mix them up. Agree, Reuben said. Neville was supposed to go to the Venus Garden, but he went to Aphrodite. He didn't know the way through the maze, so what? Roger took him and decided he wanted the garden? Or maybe Neville went on his own, Jack said. Got lost like apparently lots of people do and ended up at Aphrodite. Maybe he didn't even know he was at the wrong goddess. I wouldn't have known, Reuben said. And it was weird how the tracks leaving the maze disappeared at that tree. It's like the killer flew away and no one saw him. Miss Forrest might have if she turned and looked. Ernest was nearby at the stream, but he was looking at birds, and Torrance was still stuck in the maze. No one admitted to knowing the poison was in the museum room, Jack said. I think they all lied about that. Well, not Miss Forrest and Mr. Torrance, but the others. Do you think it's easy to poison a dart? No idea, Reuben answered. He shook his head. Someone has to be lying. This is a real mystery. It is, Jack said, but I think I have an idea who did it. And I have my dad to thank. Okay, we're at the deliberation.
Yay.
So this is our last episode of Season 7. We hope
Tis.
that you all have enjoyed games people played.
Yep. We'll never do it again.
No, are we out of games?
I guess so. We'll never do this theme again. So I hope you enjoyed it because it's dead in the water now. Well, it's actually just a duck sitting in the water, but it's not moving. You're not going to see it anymore. He's gone. Except you can go back and see it because like they're all permanently up in the air. It wasn't a great metaphor all around.
But it won't die.
It won't die, but it's not really alive, is it?
So I'm just going to change the subject and say that you all have noticed that we are ad-free. We do ask that you support our authors. So throughout the season, we had some fantastic ones giving us some really interesting stories. Check out their backlists. Buy an ebook, buy a paperback book, like them on their social media. They really make what we do a lot of fun.
That they do.
All right, Jack. So you and Ruben know more than you think you do, but you still need our help to draw it out. So here are the suspects in the order that we met them.
Yes.
Ivor Stedness, the secretary. Arthur Hawkhurst, the nephew with the sleeping disease, which is a real thing, by the way.
Sleepy.
The African sleeping disease. I was like, what's that other disease that makes you totally tired?
I'm sure there's more than 3.
Ernest Shandon, the youngest brother. Sylvia Hawkhurst, the niece who manages the manor. And a stranger, just someone we haven't met yet.
Just some guy. Is that Torres?
No, just like some guy, because, somebody
Oh.
had crept into the house. The unknown stranger. We're going to start adding him to next season. I think we'll add him to everything.
That's terrifying.
The unknown stranger. All right, so here are the facts as they have been found.
Alrighty.
Vera Forrest and Howard Torrance, guests at Whistlefield, were racing in the maze when they heard a cry. They heard someone else hurrying through the maze, but neither saw the person. They then heard a second cry from a different direction. Vera discovered Neville Shandon dead in the Venus Garden. He died sitting on the bench, his legal papers blown against the shrubs. He had a single wound to the side of his neck from a poisoned dart. I think I got these mixed up. Howard Torrance found the Aphrodite Garden with Roger Shandon dead.
Roger.
Did I switch those two?
Heck if I know. They're both Shandons. They're the same in my head.
They're both dead. Okay, we'll just move on because I may have actually written those in the wrong gardens. Stedness and the 2 gardeners went to the maze when Vera returned to the manor. Darts from an air rifle were found at both scenes. Holes in the hedges were found that would allow the shooter to fire from the outside into the center of the garden. Tracks were found leading out of one of the side entrances. The footprints went east, ending under a big tree near the fishing stream.
Alrighty.
I have so many typos in this script that it is a good thing you are not reading it. Because you'd be like, wait, what does that say?
Yeah.
Roger and Neville were twins. They had the same haircut, they wore the same facial hair, and they tended to dress similarly. So it was speculated that Neville's death may have been related to a high-profile gang-related case he was trying. Without him, the accused would be acquitted. It was equally shared that it wasn't known how Roger made his money, but from time to time, quote, investors would show up and demand to be compensated. Sylvia Hawkhurst heard her uncles talking about the maze. Roger suggested Neville go to the Aphrodite Garden for quiet to work on his arguments. Sylvia then left, taking Ernest with her and dropping him at the east gate. Sylvia was in the village with her friends at the time Vera returned to the house. She likes running Whistlefield and had no issues with any of her uncles. Arthur was rabbit hunting with an air rifle at the time Vera returned to the house. He had a blow-up with Roger that morning about his piano playing, from which he was banned. Arthur promised to get even. Ernest was around the area of the East Gate and stream birdwatching at the time Vera returned to the house. He walked back to the manor, which took him a long time because his gout acted up and he had trouble walking. Stedness was in the library with Jack and Reuben at the time Vera returned. He was satisfied working for Roger Shandon. No longer employed, though, he plans to return to London. When inspecting the safe later that day, Ernest discovered money was stolen. Stedness isn't convinced it's truly missing. The maze is famous for people getting lost. Those who lived at the manor, Roger, Stedness, Ernest, Sylvia, and Arthur, knew the shortest routes to the center. So, Jack, who should you and Reuben shine the spotlight on?
The brother. So the reason I think it's the brother is because the brother was shorter than the other two, if I remember correctly. And because he was shorter, it would explain why, when looking at how that little gunny peephole was staring at the one guy, Stennis had to crouch down, had to bend over. So that's why I don't think it was Stennis. Now, the secret hint where at the end my character says I have my dad to thank is that my dad also has gout, which this dude appears to suffer from. So if you know my father, you'll know gout galore. That must be the guy. There was another reason or two that I had thought of. Oh, no, I can't remember. I had more than one reason though, I swear. It also, the poison in the thing explains the sleeping illness. He might have actually just had it. I guess I don't know. We'll find out afterwards. Or because he brought home that pot of the drugs that literally makes you pass out and like sleep and die and all that stuff. It explained why he had the sleeping illness when he came back. I don't know how the uncle would have known it. I don't think this has anything to do with the crime, him being a lawyer. I think it's more just Ernest is broke. Maybe this was a way for him. Maybe he was getting paid by the crime boss to go off his brother. He clearly did not recognize his brother, accidentally killed the wrong one, and then had to go kill the correct one. I'm surprised he brought enough poison for that. But I don't think he purposely killed both of his brothers. So yeah, I think it was Ernest.
All right. Let's go into scene 11, the reunion. Reuben adjusted the camera angle. The library was again set with two couches, end to end, with chairs bookending them. This is as close as I can get and have the full field. It'll be fine, Jack said, setting the wireless lavaliers on each seat. I'll have the boom mic and then the individual mics. Muted voices in the hallway grew louder, and the cast filed in, one short. I'm sorry, I just hiccuped. Welcome to your library, Jack said. Please take a seat and put the microphone on your shirts. It took a few minutes for Reuben and Jack to adjust each position for best sound. Reuben claimed the chair next to the camera, and Jack picked up the boom mic. Ready to begin? Reuben asked. Remember, the camera is not here. It's just me and Jack. With nods from each and every, he reached up and pressed record. It's been a week since the untimely passing of Roger and Neville Shandon, and by the look, a great deal has changed. It has, Arthur Hawkhurst said with the maturity not seen before. The police spent a great deal of time here, studying the maze, the poison in the museum room, and the air rifles. There was quite the stir when Ernest claimed to be chased in the maze by the killer, and we were all deathly afraid when Sylvia was shot with the dart through the parlor window. Miss Hawkhurst, you survived? Reuben couldn't help the question. She nodded. Thanks to a quick-acting police inspector. She lifted the hand she held, that of Ivor Stennis. It was apparently touch and go for several days. Stennis brought the back of her hand to his lips. I have never been so distraught as when I thought you were gone from the world. She smiled softly and tipped her head to his shoulder. I still do not believe I was his target. It makes no sense. I believe he was aiming for the police inspector. Arthur leaned forward, his face set in hard lines. Uncle Ernest had to be mad. I can almost understand killing his brothers. Money can do that to some. Even faking an assault on himself makes sense. I certainly thought he narrowly escaped being the third victim. That was his intent, I should think, Stennis said. But shooting my sister, even unintentionally? Arthur shook his head. That was unforgivable. Truly, Reuben said. Miss Vera, did you know it was Ernest in the maze that day? I did not, she answered. I only heard heavy breathing and footsteps. I was terrified I would turn the corner and run into a monster. I'm afraid my imagination sometimes gets the better of me. Oh, he was a monster, Howard confirmed. Of the human variety. He sure was nimble, killing Roger and then getting to the other center to kill Neville without either of us seeing him. It was a matter of luck. If he had come across either of us and run away, Neville might have lived. Or one of you might have died, Sylvia said pointedly. Mr. Stennis, how did Ernest escape? Did the police figure it out? I mean, the footprints, the maze, it just ended at the tree. Which was where the bicycle was waiting, Stennis said. Ernest rode it to the east gate and hid it under the bridge. Then he walked back to the house. I understand the information Jack provided helped solidify Ernest as a person of interest. Reuben looked to his partner. What did you know? Remember that day, Jack said? Ernest came in and took off his shoe, complaining of gout. If he really had the gout, he would have been able to touch his toe, and it wouldn't have been better instantly. That's true, Sylvia said. Whenever he had an outbreak, he'd be couch-ridden for days, his toe swollen and so painful, even a sheet hurt it. Stennis nodded. The police inspector suffered from the same, which is why I think he became fixated on Ernest. Mr. Hawkhurst, did your uncle give an explanation when he was arrested? There was no arrest, Arthur said. Uncle saw the writing on the wall and fled into the maze with a gun. The standoff lasted for hours, with police stationed at each exit to the maze. His sister reached around the couch arms and took his hand. Uncle ended his own life rather than answer for what he did. Jack looked at Reuben. That wasn't on my Instafeed. Mine either. Reuben pocketed his phone, going off script. Did he take the money from the safe? Stennis smiled sheepishly. That, was me. I invested $15,000 with Roger Shandon some years ago. Not only was there no return, but he claimed the entire investment was lost. His eyes swept the well-appointed room. I only wanted what I had put in. I've returned it. He has reinvested it, Sylvia corrected, in Whistlefield. We're turning the estate into an elite event destination for weddings and corporate retreats. It's a partnership, Arthur said. A true partnership. Will you be available as the pianist? Jack asked. Arthur grinned. Oh, yes. I've been practicing daily. Our first event is in 6 weeks, Sylvia said, giddy with excitement. It's a mystery weekend we're calling Murder in the Maze. Consider yourselves personally invited. The end.
Yay.
That was what I meant about the whole gout thing, was that it just like, here 1 minute, gone the next. Like, gout doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really pay much attention to it. I figured gout had to do whatever it needed to do to drive the plot forward, not, hey, gout doesn't work like that.
No, gout doesn't work. In the original, Ernest had a nail in his shoe that had come loose or worked its way in. And I'm like, you know what? That's just a little bit dated of a reference. Like, nobody will get that he had an issue with his nails in his shoes. So I turned it to gout.
Yeah. No, I like that.
The full-length book, of course, you know, when you're condensing a whole book down into what amounts to a chapter and a half, you have to lose a lot. There was definitely some other events of people getting shot at, and Ernest seemed to have done it all. I had actually mixed feelings when I got to the end of this book.
How's that?
I loved that they were basically identically dressed twins. It opened up a world of, well, did they mean to kill Neville but killed Roger, and so then they had to get to the other one? And Jack is used so much like, you know, themes to actually be used. So much of the maze came into it, like, okay, number one, even if you knew that you killed the wrong twin, you then had to get to the other maze center. So it kind of had to be someone who knew the maze.
Yeah.
But so much of that I did like. The more I read, the more I seem to pay attention to how much in characters act.
Yeah.
And having Ernest, who is a slug of a human being, go through all of this effort just was out of character.
What was it for in the end? I don't remember, to be honest.
For control of the estate, for the
Control.
money. And that's why he did have to kill both of them. Otherwise, he would have had to split the estate with Neville.
You're right. If he really was a slug, he'd let someone else own it and him just live in it.
Or he would have killed them more like he would have walked into the room with a gun and just shot them. And then blamed the invisible stranger type thing. But somebody who is naturally lazy would not have gone to such elaborate planning. This really was... that's the part that I found, like, if Ernest had been a different type of character,
it would have worked. Yeah,
it would have worked.
And this required a lot of energy and plotting.
Yeah, and when I was reading it, I actually had dismissed him because I'm like, Ernest isn't going to move that much. No, it was him. Like, you suck.
Huh. Yeah, that's... I guess if you pay attention to the characterization, it doesn't make sense. The motive
pretty much works.
It pretty much works, but like I said, I also think, if he's a lazy dude, why would he want control? What's he going to do with it?
I think he wanted the idea of control because he was getting nagged about, being a slug.
Yeah, but he wasn't actually doing anything to fix it.
Well, I think he was still going to be a slug. He was just expecting Stennis and Sylvia would run everything, and, he could just lay on the couch and do whatever he wanted to do.
I suppose. But yeah, no, there were a couple things about his character that, you're right, don't quite match up.
And of course, in the full-length book, Stennis is a little bit more of a slick character. And I did carry through his motives. So he was one of the people that Roger apparently conned. And so he had stolen from Roger and was just about to make his getaway when Roger dies. So, like, the whole time, he's got this ticket and he's, like, going to run. He's got everything packed and he can't go. And the police are there and he's like, but my train. Like, no, I can stay.
Him leaving definitely seemed like they're letting him leave for a second there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Arthur was definitely the red herring. I mean, the obvious hot-tempered boy with the air rifle.
Yeah, that one I didn't really think was it, just because, I don't know. Have you ever seen a piano player kill someone? No kidding. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. He was too obvious. And in the end, he didn't get that much out of it other than a little bit of revenge for what?
A slight.
A slight against him. That's not the kind of revenge he would have wanted to get. He would have wanted to see the result, play out.
And in the book, Sylvia's not a suspect, and neither are Vera or Howard. For our purposes, I threw her in there, but she's pretty easy to dismiss when she's in the village during the time of the death.
Yeah. Well,
even though, again, because of the abbreviated thing, we don't get confirmed alibis. We just take it that, well, she was there.
That is the nature of this game.
So would you like to hear about our original author?
Of course. Let's hear about JJ.
So Murder in the Maze by J.J. Connington. That was the pen name of Alfred Walter Stewart. So he was a British chemist and part-time novelist who was born in 1880 and died in 1947. As a chemist, he had a highly successful career. He earned his doctorate of science from Glasgow University in 1907, and a year later he wrote a textbook on organic chemistry that proved to be very popular, and so he went on to write a total of 4 books on advanced chemistry topics. Stewart, as Connington, is credited with over 26 novels. Many of them are detective novels. Murder in the Maze was the first of 17 for Chief Constable Sir Clinton Driffield, who unfortunately you didn't meet today because I replaced him with Jack and Reuben. Published in 1927, Murder in the Maze is now available in the public domain through Project Gutenberg. So I'm always curious too, first books of long series can be a little rough, so I'd be kind of curious to read a few more Chief Constable Sir Clinton Driffield, not a mouthful at all, and see how he matured. Let's learn about mazes. To Smithsonian Magazine, Mazes have been around for thousands of years. They can be made out of pretty much anything that provides a barrier. Hedges, corn, mirrors, wood. They change in size and complexity to suit the space and the designer. Mazes began as labyrinths. What's the difference? I had to learn it. Labyrinths are single paths meant to provide a journey, not a puzzle. So basically you can't get lost. You just walk from one end to the other in this very serene Zen environment. At least some of them had spiritual meaning, letting you contemplate the meaning of life as you wandered. Sometime during the Middle Ages, which, another thing I learned, a totally long period of time between the fall of Rome in like 476 and the start of the Renaissance, which is somewhere between 1400 and 1450, labyrinths evolved to be amusements, which qualifies them, at least for us, as games. England has a long tradition of mazes, and the Smithsonian website reports over 125 are open to the public. Here in Indiana, where we live, fall isn't fall without corn mazes, followed by some hot apple cider. So, next time you see a maze, be amazed, because it is a part of a tradition that is thousands of years old. You already know about me, so we're going to skip that part today and go straight to the wrap-up. That wraps up this episode of Mysteries to Die For. Support our show by subscribing, telling a mystery lover about us, and giving us a 5-star review. Check out our website, which is going to be brand new at the start of the next season. Mysteries to Die For is rolling out to our own website, so separating from my writing website. It is going to be m2d4podcast.com. Working on building that up now and should be live hopefully here first of the year. Mysteries to Die For is hosted by TG Wolff and Jack Wolff. Amazed to Death, Not a Documentary, was written by TG Wolff, adapted from Murder in the Maze by J.J. Connington. Music and production are by Jack Wolff, and episode art is by TG Wolff. Join us next week for a toe tag. You all know that's a first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, or thriller genre. Then come back in 2 weeks for the start of season 8. This time, it's anything but murder. All right, Jack, take us out.